So my background, as was said also in the introduction, is that I've done research mostly in Africa, actually, and a lot of that research has been on pastoralism. And from 2012, I got the opportunity to lead a research project, a cooperation between the Norwegian University of Life Sciences, where I work, and Sámi researchers at the International Center for Reindeer Husbandry and Sámi University College in Kautokeino in the far north of Norway. In that research, we focused on this difficult relationship that there is between the Norwegian state and Sámi Reindeer Pastoralism, especially in Norway and in the north. I think the relationship might be slightly better in Sweden, as far as I understand, and I also understand that it has changed over time in Sweden, and it might be changing in Norway as well. But the relationship is still very difficult, in particular due to this destocking policy that the government has been trying to implement for several decades, but especially since 2014-15, the government has enforced a policy of destocking. So the aim has been to reduce the number of reindeer herders, as well as and of course the number of reindeer, and this has caused a lot of debate and conflicts, and it may also lead to conflicts among reindeer herders, because there are set quotas that have to be shared between them, and it also leads to then difficulties for the younger generation to enter this business of reindeer husbandry. So that's the sort of the motive of this piece of art that I put here on the first slide by the Sámi artist Marit Anna Sara. That sort of depicts the consequences of this forced destocking policy. I should also say that I'm not feeling too well today, so I might be coughing once in a while, so apologies in advance for that. So in this research, we looking at this difficult relationship, as I said, between the Norwegian state and Sámi reindeer herders in the far north, in the Finnmark area in northern Norway. We also use the political ecology approach. I think, I don't know how much you know about political ecology, but you might be familiar with this approach, which is quite a wide approach that is also growing, and as we speak, with different internal approaches, but a commonality is a focus on power in environmental governance, and this is the textbook that Hannah and I recently published, which gives an introduction to how we see political ecology. So there are different, as I say, different approaches to political ecology. But I'm not going to give a general introduction to political ecology here, but rather focus on three aspects that are relevant for the case that I will present. So obviously focus on power and justice, and then focus on this co-production of struggles over material resources as well as struggles over meaning. So how we talk about, or how we write about struggles over resources is to some extent produced by our interest in these resources, but also how we talk and write about these struggles may influence the struggles themselves. So there is this co-production between the material level and the level of meaning, which I'll try to illustrate here. And the third aspect is that I'll talk about is this the critique that political ecology has had towards what has been called apolitical ecology, or natural science that pretends to be objective and neutral, but that is just as political ecology. So a little bit about, or let's move to the topic of reindeer pastoralism. So this is a group that I followed. I followed their spring migration in 2013 in Finnmark. So this is the Finnmark area, and you have the blue areas are the winter pastures, and the red areas are the summer pastures. So you have migrations here from the inland. This is the area called Finnmarksvidda, which is a mountainous plateau where you have winter pastures, and then you have migrations in late April, early May, out to the coast and then back again. So the group that I followed, they migrated, I think, from this area and to this peninsula here. So that's about 300 kilometers. And then there is the autumn migration back again in October, November. And there is a shared understanding in Norway, and has been for a long time, that there is overstocking of the winter pastures. So the winter pastures are being depleted, is the claim, by too many reindeer. So there is a general agreement that there are too many reindeer, and that's hence the government's policy to reduce the number of reindeer and reduce the number of reindeer herders, especially in Finnmark, and especially in the western part of Finnmark, which is the biggest reindeer herding area in Norway. So this is a discourse that has totally dominated political life, this idea that, and totally dominated the relationship between the state and reindeer herders. This idea that there are too many reindeer. So it's a shared discourse among politicians, state officials, environmentalists, natural scientists, and the media, which is basically saying that then there are too many reindeer, leading to destruction of the winter pastures, and that in particular the lichen layer, that's the main pasture resource on the winter pastures, is the lichen. And it's also said that too many reindeer lead to land use conflicts, and then also low economic output, meaning low carcass weights of individual reindeer. I should say that this was when we started this research. So this project that I led was from 2012 to 2016. And when we started the research, this discourse was very clear and very dominant. But I think I can see some changes now. There are some cracks in the discourse, and especially environmentalists have, while they tended to be very critical to reindeer herding as an activity, and this idea, and also reproducing this idea that it sort of leads to overstocking and depletion of the pastures, and then negative impacts on biodiversity and so on. There seems to be some change in the attitudes among environmentalists now, and they more and more, I think, environmentalists see reindeer pastoralists as allies more than problems. So there might be some changes. We might go towards what I understand is more of the Swedish situation, where I think the idea of overstocking and the depletion of the pastures is less dominant. Okay, so that's, but still this is the dominant discourse. But then when you talk to the herders in Finnmark, they have a completely different story. They talk about variable natural conditions, loss of pastures to other land uses such as mining, windmills, various tourist development projects, the construction of cabins, and so on. And they also focus on herd productivity rather than the weights of individual animals. and they focus on the necessity to have a diverse herd. So because the government has established a policy which is trying to get the herders to have herds that basically consist of females and calves with very few bucks. So bucks are seen as unproductive animals, so that you only need a small percentage of bucks for reproduction, but otherwise the idea is that there should be that production should be based on the slaughtering of the calves that are born in spring and then slaughtered in the autumn. And this is actually against the Sámi tradition to slaughter calves. And there are also problems with slaughtering calves, like you get a more unruly herd because the females will be looking for their calves in the herd. So you get a herd that is more difficult to manage. But anyway, that's the government policy, and many are forced to follow that policy because of these the subsidies that have been established. But the herders themselves say that you need bucks and castrates in the herd in order to make the winter pastures available when there is a lot of snow, for instance, or when winter conditions shift from it may rain and then freeze and then you get ice layers in the snow. So under such conditions, takes more energy and it becomes more difficult for the herd to get down to the pastures under the snow, and then you need strong animals. So by following the government policy, you also get a herd that is more vulnerable to climate variation and climate change. So there are some, according to the herders, there are some reasons to keep this unproductive, as it were, unproductive animals. Yeah, okay, so if you look at this graph, it shows, and just look at the upper green line and also the red line. So the upper green line shows variations in reindeer numbers from 1980 to 2014. So you see that there are variations which are caused by, and this is for West Finnmark, again, which is the biggest reindeer herding area in Norway, and also the area which is seen by the government as the most problematic area. And you see there are variations. These variations are caused by climatic variations and also by variations in policy. And then the government has set these upper limits to how many reindeer there can be in the area. And you see that's the red line. And you see that this has also, although that it's presented as scientifically based, you see that it has also shifted over time. And it's also, and that's a discussion I don't have time to go into now, but it's also unclear on what basis this upper reindeer numbers or carrying capacity, if we want to use that term, on what basis it has been established. It's not clear whether these are economic limits, ecological limits, or what is called maximum sustainable yield, for instance. I should have continued this graph after 2014, but I wasn't able to find a good graph that illustrates the changes, because from 2014-15 the government started to enforce this policy of destocking by giving high fines to the herders who did not or do not manage to reduce or are not willing to reduce their numbers below this upper limit that the government has set. So if I had continued this graph, you would have seen that the green line goes down to exactly where the red line is. So that's the result of the enforced destocking policy. And so the green and the red line lines have followed each other after 2014-15. And so as a justification or as evidence for this, for claims about overstocking, we also often see this type of map being reproduced, which is based on satellite images and showing then how the overstocked areas have been increasing from 1980 to 2009, where the red then is overgrazed, orange moderately grazed, and white intact. There are many problems with these type of maps. One problem is, of course, that it sort of glosses over a very heterogeneous landscape. So there are, variations within the area that is colored red here, for instance. Another problem is that it's based on this idea of an intact landscape. So this is an area where there has been reindeer herding going on for centuries, but apparently here a landscape from the 1970s or 80s is seen to be an intact landscape, which changes since then are compared to. But the main problem here is that all change is seen as coming from grazing or coming from the reindeer. But the main change that is happening here is actually what is called gjengroing in Norwegian, or bush encroachment. So we've seen this the last decades, that this winter pasture area has been increasingly covered by these small birches and willows, and which may outcompete the lichen, but also when you try to measure the lichen layers from space using satellite images, there may be lichen that is in the shadow of these bushes that you won't be able to see. So there are some methodological problems here as well. And this process of gjengroing, bush encroachment, is a process that is going on all over Norway, especially in the mountainous areas, and it's generally seen to be a result of climate change and decreased grazing. I think it's probably a process you see in Sweden as well. So there are many problems with these using these maps. But by the way, can you see the headline? Because I haven't. I have the images of.
Yes, we can see the headline.
Okay, you can see the headline. Okay, good. Yeah. So, what do we then know about the changes in the lichen layers? We know actually quite a lot, because the Minister of Food and Agriculture has commissioned Norwegian Institute of Nature Research to carry out a survey or a monitoring of lichen in the winter pasture area, starting in 1998. So they have carried out this monitoring in 98, 2005, 2010, and also on a smaller number of sites in 2013 and 18. So they have established a bit more than 50 sites that they have monitored during these years through measuring the vegetation and especially the lichen layer on these sites. And what we see is that from 98 to 2005, there was actually an increase in the lichen cover from 19 to 27%, and the lichen layers increased from 10 millimeters, that's the average, 10 to 29 millimeters. And this is a fact that has been underreported in the Norwegian debate. It is barely mentioned. And then from 2005 to 10, there was then a small decrease from 27% to 24% coverage, and from 29 to 23% in the average thickness of the layers. But all in all, there is no there are no grounds, this cannot be used to claim that there is crisis on the winter pastures, even though there was a decline from 2005 to 2010. But if you compare 98 and 2010, there is actually an increase. And also, if you include the results from 2013 and 18, there are some variable results, but not the general decline. For instance, in 2013, the results, and then, as I said, they did this on a smaller number of sites. The results showed on coverage that there was a decrease from 2010 to 13, but also with great spatial variation. And some places there was an increase. And when it comes to thickness, you see the numbers from the for the average thickness of the layers for the various years. So there is, I mean, you cannot use these data to claim that there is crisis and overstocking on the winter pastures. But that's what the biologists in the Norwegian Institute of Nature Research surprisingly do. They have, at least in the public debate. So when this survey from 2013 was published, it was published actually in 2015. So this was the website of NINA when they launched that report, saying that too many reindeer leads to less lichen on vidda. Vidda is this winter pasture area. So that was, and there is simply no justification for that claim in the results. And also, if you look at the last publication from these biologists in peer-reviewed journals, which is from 2013, the headline is, or the title of the article is "Rapid Recovery of the Lichen Pastures." So they say they have one message in their peer-reviewed articles and another in the public debate. So that's briefly my presentation. So here are just a couple of conclusions that Sámi Reindeer Pastoralism has had an image problem in Norway for a long time, dominated by negative use of environmental degradation, poor economic performance, land use conflicts, and also neglect of traditional knowledge related to how the herd should be managed, for instance. That's just one example. But I think we may also see a change in the perception now in Norway of Sámi reindeer herding and of Sámi culture and language in general, I would say. So there has been a revival, and there is a younger generation now which is also more active in promoting Sámi issues and advocating for Sámi issues in various ways, also for Sámi Reindeer Pastoralism. But so our research also, and obviously we have been in a debate with these Norwegian biologists that have provided the scientific basis for the destocking policy, basis that I and some of my colleagues claim to be highly problematic. And that's the debate that is going on. We had an article in the journal called Pastoralism last year, and they now, about a week ago, they had a response to that, or some of the biologists had a response to that article. So it's an ongoing debate. I think that's it. Thank you.